This is Dune Talk, a DuneNewsNet.com production. Join us now for the latest Dune news, reactions, and lively discussions.
Hey guys, this is Marcus again from Dune Newsnet, and we're excited to come with another episode about all the movie news that's been coming out the past week. So I'm here together with Simon.
Hey everyone, how's everyone going? Hey, we're almost there, people. We're almost there. Italy will have the movie by the time, a month out, by the time this is up. Exciting times.
And welcome back to Johnny.
Hey everyone, happy to be back. It's been too long, but here we are. There's plenty to talk about. And as Simon said, it is getting close. By the time this is up, I mean, it's basically 2 weeks until the premiere at Venice. So that'll be when we really, if people are actually going to see this thing, and we'll know for sure what's up. So very exciting.
That reminds me, I need to request a day off in October or something at work. Work's listening. I have a family event I need to go to.
Yeah, so close. Really exciting. And I think pretty much on last week we've gotten another big wave of Dune movie news. So let's just jump right in.
Dune movie news.
So the first story we're going to cover today is last week Thursday we got a bunch of new character teasers that were introducing House Atreides. So we of course got the core family, Duke Leto, Lady Jessica, Paul Atreides, and then we got their loyal retainers. So we got Duncan Idaho, Gurney Halleck, and Dr. Yui. So it was a good introduction to both the core family and the characters who are supporting them closely. So let's start with you, Simon. What was your reaction to those six teasers?
Well, my first reaction was I saw them as I was editing the last show. I was like, oh, of course, these come out after we're done recording. I liked them. I liked them all, and I was surprised that we had a Yui. I did not picture Yui being one of them.
What did you think, Johnny?
Yeah. Well, the first thing was surprise because we weren't really expecting it. And it came from IGN, posted them first on Thursday. And in the article, which you actually had to click into to get to the videos at first, they had a bunch of details saying that this was basically the first batch of videos that we were going to be getting. They said next Thursday we'll have some for the Fremen characters, and then the Thursday after that, the day, which will be the day before the premiere, will be the Harkonnen videos for characters. So that's exciting. It's very well orchestrated, seems like, and organized. IGN's obviously a big outlet, so it's nice to see them kind of chipping in, and that'll definitely get some eyeballs on it. And then they said every Thursday after that, leading up till the October 22nd release in the US, they'll have some new material. So it sounds like they have a really good barrage kind of lined up. And at this point, as we said, we're getting so close. It seems like every day there's something to talk about or mention, or there's an article written about it from something. So that's great. I mean, exposure is the key here. And I really like these videos. They were short and sweet, didn't show too much. My one real complaint, and it's really not, the marketing team decides this for whatever reason, but the fact that there's these little blocky, cell phone videos instead of the wide, like full aspect ratio. So you don't really get to appreciate each shot like you would like in a trailer or something, but the stuff in them is great. I'd say the standouts for me would be there's really a standout in every single one, but the ones that I really liked, the Thopter moment in Leto's video, which we saw in the IMAX preview, which was definitely a jaw dropper. And then there's the moment with Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica. There's a couple in there. There's one where she's attacking a trooper in Thopter, which is really cool and straight out of the book. Then there's also a really interesting kind of mystifying image of her, what looks like in a siege or something. There's like almost like hieroglyphics like on the wall, and she's like in a lotus pose, and she has it's very similar to what we were seeing in the trailer, but in a just different setting, it seems like. So that's really cool. I'm digging these, and I'm looking forward to the ones we get tomorrow. Which there was a little bit of an incident with IGN where we kind of got some early and got to see some of those, but it'll be nice. They'll be out officially tomorrow. And I also noticed that the Dune social media pages, they give IGN like 24 hours to have them. And then the next day on Friday, they went and posted them themselves and got that kind of extra exposure out to the fans. So that's cool to see. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been an interesting dynamic. As you mentioned, it would have been nice to see the full aspect ratio for these, but it does seem that they took the approach that this is first for social media. Like you had the first video that was actually posted by Timothée Chalamet himself on his Instagram, and it's been all over social media. So it does look like they're leaning heavily into those channels. And yeah, it's great to see the Dune movie account finally active after laying dormant for some time and engaging with the fans. I think it's been getting a lot of people excited. Thinking about some of the scenes. So of course we saw like it was a bunch of old or like previously revealed and footage, some from the IMAX theater. So we did see the scene in a couple of them with Paul and Gurney running in the desert, which is also the scene where they're running away from the sandworm. So that was pretty cool to see. And one of the scenes I really liked was one from Duke Leto when he's like walking in front of the Atreides troops and they're cheering him on, and it's like all this excitement. I feel like just that Duke Leto teaser, like the music, the atmosphere of it, like was really a lot of hype, and seeing like how loyal his people are to him, and like what a popular leader he is. I thought they did an excellent job with that one. Simon, what was your favorite of the six?
You know what? The Leto might be my favorite. As much as I love Duncan, I think the Leto was, and it's funny, Johnny, that you mentioned the square thing, because I was showing Marcus how I got the videos ready for the editing of this show. I'm like, I hate that they're square. Why can't we get them full? But it makes sense. Right. I mean, how often do we check social media per day? And the average person might see them as an ad on Twitter, or Facebook, or whatever, and it'll fit more. Then I think that's something, sadly, that we're going to get more and more of. But also, it'll make us appreciate the full scope of the movie when, fingers crossed, we can see it in the theaters. But I'm excited. I think my least favorite one was probably the Gurney one. I like the whole smile Gurney, but I feel like that's played out a little bit in my head now.
Well, he's always smiling, right? So
yeah.
What I really liked from that one was that we did get to see more of that scene with him and Paul, and like the intensity of that fight, and like you found the mood. So I think it was it was cool to show that relationship with them. It's like all of them in a sense they touch on Paul's relationships with the characters, like whether it was with his parents, Duke Leto giving that serious conversation to him about leadership, or his friendship with Duncan Idaho, or like Gurney Halleck as a more serious mentor. I really liked how you got to see him from those different perspectives. Johnny, did you have another one that stood out to you?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I think the Gurney one, at least from what I saw on Facebook and like Reddit and stuff, people really seem to like that one because it is straight out of the book. Like it's pretty much line for line, like typical, like classic Gurney, which I think is cool. Really like the Leto one. Really like the Lady Jessica one. There was a couple of moments. The Yui one I thought was really interesting, as you kind of pointed out, that they gave him a video. And this is we're doing book spoilers, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's clever because, of course, if you're including him with the family videos, it's like, oh, well, this seems like a cool dude, and you're not gonna maybe suspect anything, which is definitely makes sense to do that. And I really thought it was what the moments that they included in there. They didn't include too many, but there's like the part where Paul says, what's Dr. Yui doing here? It was very kind of unsettling, like, well, what's going on? And he talks about the spice and how it's affecting him. It kind of seems to me like maybe that scene is after the harvester scene where he's like hit with the spice for the first time. And then that's when they call in Yui, and they kind of explain that for the audience and for Paul. So I think that could be pretty interesting. But I really like these, and I'm really looking forward to officially getting the Fremen ones tomorrow, because I think those are going to be especially interesting for fans and new people.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about the Dr. Yu, and I think that would fit in terms of the placement. Like, he has that unexpected reaction to the spice, and then he's his mother is obviously really worried about him, and it also shows that he doesn't have a close relationship with Yui. Like, what's he doing here?
Yeah.
So I think that was nice to see that contrast, and then of course you get to see the characterization of the Suk doctors. So they're the really trusted physicians of the Dune universe. So they have this conditioning that they basically are not able to take a human life. So they're basically trusted and can be considered fit to serve the emperor, which some of them do. So yes, it's good that they're showing that, and also their skills, how they can see someone's physiological and psychological state just with touching them. So I thought it was good to see that. We haven't seen much of him.
The part that got me really excited about the Jessica one is when you actually hear Stilgar talking to her. I love Javier Bardem's accent, and that's the Fremen one I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so if you didn't get a chance to watch these character teasers, we have all of them posted on the website as well. So I'll have a link in the show notes. So let's go to our second story for today, and this was an interview that was led to quite a number of reactions online. So basically, Italian magazine La Repubblica had run an interview with Denis Villeneuve ahead of the Venice Film Festival. So they were talking about the movie, like getting into insights about creating the movie, what was his perspective. They also had some angles about what he wanted to do next. But there was one section of that interview that really caught everybody's attention. So the interviewer had asked, how he felt about working with the big stars, Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya, and Villeneuve recounted about how, when it came to the role of Paul Atreides, he knew immediately that Timothy was Paul Atreides, so it was a really clear decision for him. There was no plan B. Then when it came to Zendaya, he didn't immediately have someone in mind, but she really impressed him in that first audition, and he knew immediately that she was going to be the desert tiger. I liked how he characterized that. And he came with this quote: "I'm honored to present two such explosive talents on screen, and I can't wait to shoot the second part of Dune to have them back together, knowing that in the next chapter, Zendaya will be the protagonist of the story." And of course, everybody especially picked up on that last line. Of course, that whole quote is really important. Let's start with you, Johnny. What was your initial reaction to this when you saw the article?
Yeah, so I was really excited about this for a number of reasons. Of course, the main thing that everyone has to keep in mind, and I said this because I basically did a little thread that kind of on Twitter that really broke down the main key quotes from this. And the very first thing I said to preface it was, it's been translated like multiple times, probably, because he doesn't speak Italian, to my knowledge. So he would have said it in English and then had it go to Italian, and then someone had to translate it back. But the bottom line is that this is really exciting because it's, first off, acknowledging part two again, and expressing excitement, expressing interest in that, and going to that level, and then of course talking about Chalamet and Zendaya in particular. I think that is something that people are looking for and looking to, just because they are so popular right now, and really talented and kind of like rising stars, even though they are like really a couple of the biggest stars in the world. And so, but of course, the thing that a lot of people latched onto was the comment about Zendaya and her role in the sequel, which of course is, to people who have read the book, this quote, at least for me, didn't really stand out, like especially in a strange way or like a surprising way. Chani is a huge part of the book, and her relationship with Paul is a huge part of the book. And now, I think when you're translating something from a book to the film, of course, things are going to change. You're going to increase screen time for certain characters, or increase, build relationships in a different way than you would on the page. So I think it makes perfect sense that Zendaya and Chani is going to have a bigger presence, maybe a lot more screen time potentially in a part two, just because she is kind of Paul's into the Fremen culture. That, in the same way that Lady Jessica, I think in this part one, is going to be the female lead of this movie, and is very much, one of the main characters of the book, probably second to Paul, of course. I think in the second movie, Zendaya would be, as Chani would be the female lead, or, right there kind of balancing screen time with Paul, whether they're in the same scenes together, whether they're in different parts of the story doing their own things. I think that that's going to be an important viewpoint as a character, and to form the narrative in a way. And again, knowing if you've read the book, or if you've read, Dune Messiah, or if you're more familiar with the series at large, this makes even more sense to do this. And I think so. Reading it maybe offhand as someone, if you were not familiar with the book, or if you have only read maybe the first book, it seems kind of like, well, that doesn't really make sense, or the translation seems kind of wonky or whatever. I think it still makes sense. Even if that translation is 100% accurate, I still think it makes sense. And I think it would be a wise move. I really like the quote that he said about the audition process, and almost feeling like regretful about it. Because it's, in retrospect for me, when this cast was coming together and this was a film I was really excited about, every casting move seemed like brilliant and like so obvious, but like also surprising. And for Zendaya, when I heard she was cast as Chani, I was like, I never would have thought of her, and I don't really know how I feel about her, but I trust it. Like, I'm willing to give that a chance. Like, I think that's an interesting choice. And I think it's even more interesting now, knowing confirmed that there was an audition process. She wasn't just contacted and chosen for the role. She actually had to compete to some extent. I think that, of course, boosts that profile a little bit more and makes that more exciting. And based on what we've seen, whether it's the trailers or we've all seen the IMAX preview, including the opening 10 minutes, which is very much focused with Chani, she's great. I really do like her in this, and she's even impressed me more than I was expecting. I really like her, like on Euphoria and other things I've seen her in. I think that she could really do a good job with this role, and it makes me want to even see not just part two, which I'm excited about what he's talking about here, but potentially a Dune Messiah movie or more stories down the road. I think that's all. It all sounded great to me. I know there's been kind of like mixed feelings, but I think if you take it at face value and also use some other context, I think it makes sense and is reason to be excited.
Yeah, and totally. One of the things that was interesting, and we've put that together from various interviews, and Zendaya herself mentioned that she wasn't in the movie very much. So I know that there's been some reports that she maybe was on set for about a week, give or take, a bit less, a bit more. But what we saw of her in the trailer and the IMAX preview, with her really being the narrator and the voice for people, it's clear that Villeneuve, he does have that vision looking ahead to part two. As a lot of people had mentioned, you don't just cast Zendaya to be in your movie for 5 minutes. So it's clear that he does have that vision of what's coming next. We've heard that from Roger Yuan as well, with he's going to have a role in the next movie in a certain scene with against Fade. So it's clear that they were filming part one, but they had part two in the back of their minds.
Definitely.
So Simon, what stood out to you most from this quote or the discussion overall?
Well, my first reaction when I saw Zendaya star part two, I was like, all right, this is a little bit of clickbait action right now. But like you said, Johnny and Marcus, if you read the book, Zendaya plays a crucial part after the end of part one. And let's not forget that the book is actually broken up into 3 different books. And she would make sense to be a big part of part two, because he doesn't want to call it Dune 2. Also, that's something he's making very clear. First of all, before anything else, he's talking about part 2. So let's all be happy about that. I think it's great. I think there's also that time gap after what supposedly how part 1 ends. I don't want to go into spoilers in the book. And what if Paul's changes happens, but we also see it through Zendaya, Chani's voice, and we see her talking to maybe Jessica. Maybe they get that bond, and it's like, hey, something's happening with Paul. I'm not too sure what's going on. And we see a montage of Paul changing all. But I'm excited. And yes, if they are making Dune Messiah, which is technically the second book, but would be part 3, movie-wise, it's like some Harry Potter stuff right now. But he plays a crucial role. Chani is one of the main characters. Yes, Paul's going to have to be introduced to the Fremens, very much like we are going to be. And Zendaya / Chani is his person that's going to introduce him to this different world. I think it's great that we get House Atreides and we get introduced to them through Duke Leto. We get introduced through Jessica, and everyone that we saw in those little teasers. But Zendaya needs to introduce Paul to her world, show him, I hate doing a Disney song, but it would be part of a whole new world with Zendaya. I think it's good. I think it's awesome that Denis is already writing part 2. It gives me hope. It gives me hope that they shot some stuff already for part 2. Like, I remember when we did the trailer breakdown, the golden suit, that has to be in part 2 or some kind of weird vision. So I'm excited. I think the internet blew something out of proportion, like always. They're both going to be the star of part 2, and maybe some other characters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's actually one other quote I wanted to read from Denis, and this was from 2020. It was from the interview with Empire, where Denis was talking about the character of Paul Atreides. So he said, Paul has been raised in a very strict environment with a lot of training because he's the son of a duke, and one day he's training to be the duke. But as much as he's been prepared and trained for that role, is it really what he dreams to be? That's the contradiction of that character. It's like Michael Corleone in The Godfather. It's something that has someone who has a very tragic fate, and he will become something that he's not wishing to become. So from that aspect, it's really interesting because we know that Paul is a complex character. He's going on this amazing journey, and of course, the story is centering around Paul. Like he's the driving force behind this. Like his transformation, the vision he's going to have, taking leadership of the Fremen people. But it's going to be really interesting to see a lot of those scenes in this case, from Chani's perspective. Like I won't go into detail on the next exact scene, but we know that that Paul and Chani suffer a major loss, and that's literally covered in one sentence, and that's it. That's all you hear about. And I can imagine actually seeing Chani's full reaction to that scene in question would be amazing on screen, based on, how we've seen her portray her characters in other films, thinking about what you mentioned, Johnny, about her performance in Euphoria. Like, imagine that scene with Chani reacting to it. It's like, really, really looking forward to seeing some of those emotional scenes.
I'm actually getting goosebumps just thinking about possibly seeing that scene. And it is. I never thought about it. In the book, it's mentioned. It sure is an important part, but seeing it through her eyes would bring a whole new level. This is an adaptation of the book. It's not word for word. And I believe Denis can make that scene, I don't want to say beautiful, but he can bring some Denis to it and make it feel like what we should feel when that scene happens.
Yeah, and Johnny, one thing I wanted to ask you, so when this story first came out, I wrote about it on Dune Newsnet on the Friday, and then over the weekend and on the Monday, like it seemed like there was an increasingly a wave of articles that were with increasingly confusing headlines. Like, for example, some people were even some reputable outlets were saying, like Zendaya is going to replace Chalamet as the lead in part two. And I liked your comment about how any news at this point is like positive because it's getting attention for the movie. But what was your reaction when you saw like all these even reputable media outlets getting carried away?
Well, to be quite honest, I mean, I went to school for journalism. Like, I am a writer. I am like a reporter. I'm part of like the media, I guess you could say, unofficially. But I mean, I was not surprised in the least. Like, it was really the most predictable thing that was going to happen. Honestly, I was just surprised it took so long for some people to pick up on it and to run with it like they did. I mean, they're literally still running with it as we speak. So, and it's been like a week. So it is what it is. As you mentioned, as I said, at this point, all news is good news. Like, the fact that people are talking about it so much, and really, there's been some like strange like pushback to this, maybe some negativity or like the way it's been spun. But I think overall, people are still like, oh yeah, like that's like sounds exciting. Like, more Zendaya, we would love to see that, especially her fans. I mentioned, I think that if there's one thing he was gonna say, like he knows what he's doing. Like, he's clever. He's trying to galvanize that fan base. He's trying to kind of get them into the theater or get them to watch this in some form or fashion, and to support it and to ask for a second movie. Because if people really like her in this, or they really like the movie, they're gonna want to see a whole another movie like this where she is like a main presence. And I think one last part that I wanted to mention as well is that this came, we got the second trailer almost a month ago now, which is kind of strange to think about. And the last shot in that trailer is what? It's Paul and Chani. It's Zendaya and Timothée Chalamet. And that is a shot that we speculated, or at least I speculated or predicted, is a future vision or something, because he has the blue eyes, she has the blue eyes. They're in the future to some extent. Potentially, it could be something that plays out in part two or later on. So this is not like, oh, let me just throw this out there. Like, I'm just kind of making this up as I go along. Like, this is something the marketing and Denis are both leaning into and saying Zendaya is a big, she's a significant presence in this movie in a different way. But in the next movie and going forward in any capacity, she would be a huge, even larger role. And I think that's something, again, that is exciting and something to look forward to. And, I think just this was a great little article, and the fact that he touched on so many different things that I thought were not only establishing things he had spoken on before, but also hinting on some new things as well. I mean, the way he talked about, his conversation with Eric Roth, the screenwriter, about, making the female characters even stronger and, really focusing on writing them in this movie because they needed to be done, justice in a certain way that maybe they weren't done previously. Also talking about like the look of the film, like his designs and the way he's shot it, not wanting it to be almost like a polar opposite of Jodorowsky, what you might have expected from him. Like, it's just natural, like color palettes, like nothing too like flashy in that regard. Even the designs of the ships, they're like kind of practical, but they are like these huge imposing figures in the movie, almost like characters in themselves. The ornithopter designs, I just thought this was a really good kind of battery of quotes that we could all kind of take something from, regardless of what you're interested or excited about in the movie.
And the last thing I wanted to say on this article and some of the all the discussions around it, I think based on what we've seen so far, because we some of us who have seen the IMAX preview, we've seen the first 10 minutes of the movie, and I mentioned this back then. Like, there's a lot of new stuff in there, but it feels like Dune. So they're not changing the story. You don't have to worry that they're going to change a major plot point in the story. This is going to be Dune. But what's happening here is Denis, he has a deep understanding of the book. It's been an important part of his life since when he was a teenager, and he's basically expanding on these points. We've seen it with the introduction, even the arrival of the Imperial ship coming to meet House Atreides, that we get that actual characterization. We see Chani being a narrator. Like, none of this is changing the story of Dune. It's just adding to it. So I would say there's really no reason to be negative or concerned about this. Like, just enjoy this vision that we're going to see coming up on the screen.
But it's the internet, and the internet has to pick on something once a week. And this week it was poor Zendaya. Yeah, and let's not forget also, Zendaya's in Spider-Man 2, and that has a trailer hitting soon. So maybe it's trying to get her name out there again. And remember, hey, she's in Spider-Man, trailer coming soon, creating more hype for Spidey, and also Dune.
Third story for today is the art and soul of Dune. So we knew that there's a making of Dune book. It's already been up for pre-order, at least the standard version for over an year. So a lot of people are probably aware of it and have pre-ordered it. But last week the limited edition went on sale. So Simon, did you order one?
No. I don't have an extra $600 around. I thought about it. I honestly didn't think of, like, if I had $600, would I spend on that? As much as I love Dune, no. Unless Denis can come over and give me like an audio commentary, and maybe we can zoom in like Timothy and Jason and like the rest of the team. I did see earlier today, before we recorded this, that the standard edition is one of the top sellers on Amazon. So that's awesome news right there. Yeah. And look, I love those art books. Like, I have all the Star Wars ones. I have even the 90s X-Men cartoon one, because that was a special thing for me back in the day. So I'm excited about getting my standard poor man edition art book. But so I think it's great. I'm curious if anyone's going to get the deluxe awesome ultimate edition. You know, maybe Mark at Dune Info will get it, and he can, you know, go on Zoom and turn the pages and tell us everything that he sees on it. So, but I'm excited. I'm mad at myself that I never got the Blade Runner 2049 from Denis. I think I might have to order that soon.
Yeah, that was a good one. How about you, Johnny? Did you get it, or were you tempted?
Yeah. Well, I've been, because the Dune Info, you know, he had been talking about this last year. Like, it's been a year basically since we first heard of this, and he really kind of broke it. So it had been spinning around in my head. I never knew how much it was going to cost. $600 is definitely, like, I mean, let's be real. Like, it's an absurd amount of money. Like, it's an absurd amount of money. But I had been plotting on it for like a year, and I'd been talking to my girlfriend about it. And it is coming out like right around my birthday as well.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I leveraged it, and she is going to get it for me for my birthday. my one big birthday gift, and it is my golden birthday as well, golden path. So I rationalized it that way, but typically I would never. And also, I like been so excited for this for like so many years at this point, and like following it. I feel like it's a little pat on my back for that. So, but the standard edition does look very, like, the standard edition book that is going to be in the limited edition as well. Like, that's still like the main attraction. I think anyone who likes Dune or is interested in the movie or interested in those types of art books, you're going to love the book. Whether you pay, $40 for it or $600 for it, it's definitely worthwhile. And the previews we've seen so far look really, really, really cool.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen the preview pages, check it out on the website. We'll also have like a link in the description as well. So we actually have got 6 full preview pages of the book, as well as the interior cover, and it's like shows a beautiful impression of Caladan. So we see Castle Caladan. We see the training room where Paul and Gurney fight. And we see the Atreides frigates that are rising above the sea, and that was really interesting to see how, because it is a water planet. So even though the House Atreides, they have this great space navy in terms of their planetary defense forces, they keep them under the water, which is because their planet is all oceanic. Simon, what did you think of those preview pages?
Gorgeous. I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, I downloaded the pictures, I went into Photoshop, I zoomed in, zoomed out, trying to see if I can find anything. And I'm happy also that it's formatted the way it is. It's not formatted like a standard book. It looks like when you open it, it'll be widescreen, so you get more of the images, not a tall, like a normal sized book, if that makes any sense. I'm interested. I'm still not paying $600 for it, but what's funny about that is one of my friends asked me, they're like, well, if Sideshow makes Hot Toys, are you going to get Hot Toys? I'm like, maybe. We'll come back to that. I have to see that and see how bad that's going to hurt the pocket. Marcus, did you order the $600 book?
So I'm considering it. So I'm still thinking if I'm going to pull the trigger, but I'm also going to have to decide fast because it's only the first 700 copies that have the signature card, because it comes with authentic signature from the director, the author Tanya Lapointe, as well as Timothée Chalamet, Josh Brolin, and Greg Fraser. So yeah, I do think it's from a collector's perspective, it is a huge amount of money. But I guess I was mentioning that as well, like from the perspective that we've been waiting for this movie for now years, and all these delays. I guess if you are a collector, I would definitely see this potentially as worth the celebration.
I will say I was surprised. I was talking to some people on the Dune Discord, like right when this came out, it was announced, and like within minutes of it, like multiple people said that they bought it. Yeah. So I was like, okay, wow, like you guys are no jokes. So that's exciting.
And the other thing that's worth noting about this, the Art and Soul of Dune, is of course we had talked about that a couple of weeks ago, is that there is going to be a special soundtrack for this art book. So Hans Zimmer, he's composed the score of Dune. He's also composed a second album, which is extended variations of those score. And he was so inspired that he also wrote a soundtrack that contains extended versions, expanded versions, specially created for this art book, intended to be a companion piece. And what's really cool is that if you simply sign up for Inside Edition's newsletter, so there's also going to be a link on our article in the description. Just sign up for the newsletter, and you'll be notified when it's available to download for free. So that's a great, like, so you don't have to purchase the book, but it's going to be the perfect companion to read along.
So if you get the collector's edition, does Hans Zimmer come and play his whole entire score for you?
I wish. Definitely, I will say with Hans Zimmer, well, it's really cool he's doing so much for this movie. It seems like he was really into it. It definitely doesn't have his name, it doesn't hurt to have his name attached to the movie. But I hope, and I've always wanted to go. I don't know how often he does shows or like goes on tour. Of course, with the pandemic, that's like a whole situation that still has to be figured out. But when and if I do get the chance to see him in concert, I am absolutely going to do it, especially now knowing he'll probably do some Dune music as well live. I think that would be pretty cool.
So going to our fourth and last story for today, we learned the news this week that Total Film is going to be releasing their special Dune themed issue on this Friday, so August 20th. And we've already seen a bunch of articles published on their site releasing some of those interviews as well as some of those images, and we can expect a lot more going on. So I'll start with you, Johnny. Like, what stood out to you in the coverage so far from Total Film?
Yeah, I mean, this has been yet another really great crop of quotes, I think, so far, and like there's a little tidbits. The main event, of course, though, is what was yesterday's news, and that was basically Denis saying, I'm writing Dune Part 2 right now. Like, it's happening in that regard. Like, I'm working on it. I am really confident in the movie. He said that everyone at Warner Brothers and Legendary is 100% behind it. They think it's great. And he also mentioned how, Dune as a property and as a film adaptation, David Lynch did not go over well. Kind of goes without saying at this point. The Dune miniseries was, again, very much a niche kind of thing that had its ups and downs. I haven't seen it personally, but I know some people kind of take it or leave it. So he really had to prove, I think, with this movie, and especially in the wake of Blade Runner 2049, which was, not a complete like failure necessarily. It's kind of like, I guess, broken even like on home video and whatnot. But that was a very, another similar situation where you had a sequel to a movie that was 30 years old and, the original was a cult classic. It was not like a very popular film. And so there was definitely has been some hesitancy with Denis and like Dune, and can you make it accessible? Can you make it into something that will be popular and make money and be a franchise? And I've said for, a long time now that there's literally never and could never be a more marketable, accessible version of Dune as a film than this. Like, if you went into a lab and like created it from scratch, I think that this is basically what you would come up with. You have Zendaya, you have Timothée Chalamet, you have Jason Momoa, Oscar Isaac, like very big, notable people, very talented people behind the camera as well. Hans Zimmer, the biggest name in film music, is attached. And Denis himself is just a very hot filmmaker in general. Sicario is a hit, Arrival is a hit, Prisoner is really popular. And this, again, all those other movies, rated R for the most part. Arrival being his highest growth, biggest, most successful film, PG-13. This is PG-13 as well. And I think, as he says in this article, basically repeating what I had been saying for a while now, especially in the wake of the IMAX event and all the good feelings coming out of that. I think this would have to be a complete and utter disaster failure, like to not warrant a part two. I think that it would have to be, like worse than what we just saw with the Suicide Squad as far as the box office. That movie got really good reviews. Fans really like it for the most part. And I think that enough. They went and gave James Gunn a TV show to make. They are welcoming him back to do another movie when and if he wants to. I think that if this is really well received by critics, which I think it's going to happen, really, really, really liked by the fans, which is pretty much guaranteed to happen just based on all the reactions so far, and then gets a good, decent amount of average moviegoers into the theater or streaming on HBO Max, I think that is all kind of a recipe for enough to warrant it. And it's kind of been said, whether by me or other people, that if there was a time that this movie could come out and not do very well and still get a sequel to happen, it's right now, because with the pandemic, with the HBO Max deal, it doesn't need to make that much money. Like, it really just needs to make like the bare minimum. And I think that we will be in a good position. I think he says he's very optimistic. That's basically how I've been feeling. And again, I mentioned the IMAX event that we went to because that I think was a very eye-opening kind of experience where I was like, wow, there's a lot of people that are kind of excited about this and are like not who I would typically expect to be excited about it. So as the marketing train continues to plug along, there's been stories every single day. I've said on the Discord talking about it, there's been more discussion, online chatter, online articles written about this movie in the last few weeks than pretty much every other October movie combined. No Time to Die is still kind of biding its time, figuring out what it's going to do. Halloween Kills kind of feels comfortable because it's a Halloween movie, and the previous one did well. Venom also just got delayed and is still kind of figuring itself out. Dune, on the other hand, because it has that HBO Max deal, it's full speed ahead. It has Venice, it has TIFF. It's looking good, and also it's releasing in a lot of places, as Simon mentioned at the top of the show, in September, in less than a month now. Right. Places like Italy, France, Mexico, some pretty big markets. So I think that'll be another thing that'll benefit it, and kind of just continuing that word of mouth. And part two is, fingers crossed. I'm feeling good about it. Don't say anything until the show's over, but I would be curious to hear what you guys have to think as well.
Yeah, and I think touching on the point about the marketing, I think a lot of people were concerned about this long period of quiet that we had. But like, if you look at what's coming out now, this is exudes confidence. I mean, this shows that they're pulling out all the stops. They're going all out, marking this like no other movies have been marketing this year. So I think if anybody had any doubt that the studios and like everybody behind this film believed in it, I think that doubt can be removed. And I definitely feel really positive about everything we've seen so far. I think to your point, like if there's any time that a movie like this could do poorly, I think now this is the time. I think the expectations have been set correctly. I mean, we do have some concerning situations, but that's going to be taken into account. I mean, you have like anybody who's involved in this movie, they know how special it is. They're going to take the situation that it releases into account. Simon, what are your thoughts? Do you share like the positivity about this release and chances of a sequel?
Oh yeah, I mean, you're right. The whole entire thing, it's the perfect time. It's been marketed more than anything that we've been talking about. And perfect example, IGN, who put up those little teasers, I'm sure if they weren't interested in getting hits, because let's face it, they need to get hits for revenues for their website, would be like, it's okay. We don't really need this Dune stuff. We can do Halloween Kills. We can do Venom. We should have done a campaign for Suicide Squad. But the people are getting excited about it. Unless it really bombs and like doesn't do well, I think Warner Brothers will not give the green light and Legendary. But I think it's pretty much a go. I wouldn't be surprised if like the day or even the weekend after it comes out officially here in the States, that we officially hear that it's green lighted, and maybe they'll announce some more cast. But it's ready, set, go. I think it's good. I'm excited about seeing the total film images. Of course, they're coming out after we're done recording. I'm sure we'll talk about them next week. And everything is just, give me the movie. It's up to that point of the hype. Like, I'm jealous of, my family in France that gets to see it a little bit before we do. But you're right, the pandemic is playing a crucial part of it. If it didn't do the big blockbuster numbers that they were hoping for pre-pandemic, it's a whole entire different thing of marketing for movies right now. And I'm curious to know if they're going to look at HBO Max numbers and being like, okay, so HBO Max subscriptions, did they go up when Dune got released? Did they go up during Suicide Squad? Did people do the free 7 days or whatever trial just to see this movie? I think a lot of that is going to be interesting. And the word of mouth, nonstop advertising, the little teasers that we got, the magazines. I'm sure this isn't the end of it. I'm sure we're going to get a Rolling Stone cover probably. It makes me think a lot of The Force Awakens, kind of. Who knows? Maybe we'll even get a Vanity Fair cover, of on the set of Dune. But it's very much the Star Wars hype market that we need for Dune. The way I got introduced to Dune as a little kid, my parents had a store in France, and someone told them, you guys should invest in the Dune action figures because this is going to be a big thing. No one ever bought those action figures. So I ended up with a bunch of them. But back in the day, they were hoping for that big market hit. And I think this is the time. And I think film audiences are smarter than back in '84. I think we've evolved as film fans, and we want something deeper and more intelligent than, no offense, a Schwarzenegger movie.
Yeah, and to your point, Simon, like when it comes to HBO Max, I know that some people are so concerned about it, but from my perspective, I'm not worried at all. I mean, 100% that they are going to be looking at those numbers. We may not hear the exact numbers or may not get them immediately, but totally, like Warner Media knows how much people are joining the service, how many people are streaming the title. So if it does come to the situation, where let's say, I hope it doesn't, but let's say that the Delta variant like puts us back into a situation where theaters have to go into lower capacity, social distancing, all of that, and it's a condition where the theaters just a movie can't make an expected box office, but then if they see that all these people are streaming it on HBO Max, they are going to take that account. They're not stupid. They have access to those
right.
numbers.
I can tell you right now. I mean, I'm going to see this movie probably. I don't even know how many times in theaters. I mean, like I saw Blade Runner 2049 6 times in theaters. I expect this will be probably more than that. But every time I go to the theater, I'm gonna leave my HBO Max on at home and leave it streaming so that it's running when I'm gone. And when I'm lounging around my room, I'm just gonna leave it on. I'm just gonna rack those streams up. I'm gonna go total stan, like I'm on Spotify and a new album just dropped and I'm trying to get the numbers up. But I think also Simon mentioned an interesting thing as well. Like, we're talking about this year and the current environment and how they're kind of gauging and judging these things. I mean, just look at a few off the top of my head that also, Cruella, Free Guy, Godzilla versus Kong, like. And especially Free Guy and Cruella, those are movies that cost over $100 million, and they Cruella only made $200 million worldwide. That was at box office receipts. It also made some money via Premier Access on Disney Plus. We don't know what those numbers were, but apparently they were good enough to get a sequel, and they were good enough to pay Emma Stone $10 million up front and stuff on the back end to get her to come back. And Free Guy, Jungle Cruise as well as another one. Jungle Cruise and Free Guy, very expensive movies. Like I said, well over $100 million. Didn't have very good opening weekends. Like Free Guy opened to, people were clapping and cheering because it made like 28 million or 30 million or something.
Which is not a lot pre-COVID.
That's not a lot. No.
That would be like number 4 or 5 pre-COVID time.
And if this was pre-COVID times, that movie would have been expected to open with 50, 60, maybe 70 million. This is a completely different atmosphere. So I think, we're seeing that the gauge for success, the gauge for what can warrant a sequel, The Rock coming on Instagram or in Twitter the next, Monday morning, basically after releasing, be like, wow, what a success. Like, we're already talking. They're asking me about sequels. We're going to have a meeting this week. As as Simon said, it wouldn't surprise me, especially that it will be open weeks in advance in some other countries and racking up box office there potentially. It wouldn't surprise me if the numbers are even decent that opening weekend. They like the streaming numbers. They like what it's been doing overseas, and they still have like China and Japan to come and things like that. And later on, it wouldn't surprise me if they're like, this is looking good. We're rating this a success, and we're happy with Villeneuve and how the cast and all this other stuff. It wouldn't surprise me. But again, not counting any chickens before they're hatched. Just gotta go through to the finish line and keep our fingers crossed and keep chugging. But there's going to be a ton of stuff between now and next month when it opens overseas, and also when it opens in 2 months in the US. There's going to be a lot of articles and media coverage and more advertisements and all types of stuff. So it's exciting. I'm just trying to enjoy the ride for now. And, I think the Venice premiere is really going to be that everything's going to change after that. I think the whole conversation is going to be different when people can see it, and not just members of the industry, but press and, actual fans who are buying tickets and going to see it at Venice, that are in the country and in Europe. And people are going to be tweeting about it, and they're going to take those. I was mentioning this on Discord. You take those, if these people are talking about it like, oh my God, this is like nothing you've ever seen, or this is the new Lord of the Rings, or all these other things that have been kind of tossed around. If you take those quotes, you take those ratings and reviews and whatever, and you put them into posters, you put them into online adverts, you put them into commercials on TV, that's going to amplify it and generate it into another level. And that's what I kind of mean, like once people actually see it. And I think that the rollout that they are kind of establishing, I think, is going to be good and work in its favor, regardless of HBO Max, regardless of Delta variant and all that, which is unavoidable. We just kind of have to roll with the punches. I'm excited. This has been a really good week, and I'm looking forward to the full Total Film article on Friday. These new videos, we got characters coming out tomorrow. It's a good time to be a fan, like no doubt.
Yeah, totally. And the last thing I want to touch on was one other comment from Denis in that article. So was again regarding the question of HBO Max when he was asked about it. And from my perspective, his answer was quite reasonable, down to earth. He was saying that the enemy of cinema is the pandemic. So he was really acknowledging that this is the situation that the world is in right now, and we have to face that. But having said that, his preference for people watching this in theaters was quite clear. So he came up with the line that watching this on a TV screen is like driving a speedboat in your bathtub. What was your reaction to
that? That was, again, people can talk and write whatever they want about this. As long as they're talking about Dune, I don't really care. What he's saying is totally reasonable. It's the same thing he said in the Variety letter that he did last December, almost a year ago. There's a pandemic. There's nothing we can do about it. He was happy to delay the movie 10 months. And I think that was the right move. I think we can all agree on that. I think if it was up to him, maybe they would delay this until next year. Or, I think he would be willing to wait as long as it took to make it happen. That's not realistic. These companies need to put movies out. They're wasting money. And that's why they're accepting lower box office on some of these, and will accept it on Dune if they have to, because they understand the situation just like Villeneuve does. The enemy of cinema is the pandemic. That's just a fact. And they're under a lot of pressure. And it is unfortunate the way it's happened. Ideally, he is an artist. He's made it with the idea that it's going to be seen in movie theaters and people are going to go to the theater and see it in IMAX. We know they shot it on IMAX. But he understands the situation. He's just expressing his own wish about what could have been, not necessarily saying, you better go see this in an IMAX theater. You better go risk your health to see this movie and support it. And there's no other way to see it. I think he's saying, yeah, this was a tribute to the big screen experience. Ideally, you'd see that way. Maybe, he didn't say this, but maybe, if they do a part 2, they can re-release it in theaters and have people see it then.
Yeah.
But I think this is just, it's been blown out proportion, of course, but I think he's totally bang on. And I've seen other directors and filmmakers come out and speak in his favor about it, from Sean Baker, Edgar Wright, liked a tweet I saw that was saying something to the same effect. So yeah, it is what it is, but I totally agree with him. I feel the same way I did last year when he was talking about it. It's just a bummer the way this deal played out, but I don't think it's going to matter that much in the end.
Simon, I'll let you have final thoughts on that.
I love that quote about the speedboat in the bath. But Denis a fan of the film, like the filmmaking progress, the art of film. So of course he wants to see his dream project, the project that he's been dreaming of since he was a young kid, in Montreal. If you're making the dream project that you want, do you really want it to be seen only on TV? No, you want people to experience it on the big epic screen. I'm sure, in 20, 30 years, that people might compare this to Lawrence of Arabia, how big and epic it is. So, yes, go see it in the theater. Wear a mask. Be a Fremen. Don't be a Harkonnen. Sure. But you know what? There's this great Stoic philosophy says amor fati, love what happens, and that's what we have to do right now. Amor fati, love it. Let's go see it in the theater. Let's be safe, and let's stream it 24/7 on HBO Max. Because I might get an email from my internet provider being like, "Sir, you hit your cap for data this month." So yeah, no. It's all right. I think Denis completely right. And once again, it's someone that loves the art of filmmaking, and he only wants the best for his audience. So I think it's all good. Once again, I agree with Johnny. Any press is good press. My favorite band has a quote that they said early on, good, bad press, at least you're talking about us at the end of the day. And that's what it is right now.
And real quick, the three of us saw the IMAX preview. We had also seen footage in the trailer previously, whether it was on our phones or on our laptops or whatever. And we've seen the trailer that they showed at the IMAX preview since then. Of course, it's been released and everyone's seen it. Like, I love the trailers. I love the way they look. I'm glad that everyone's liking them. They've been really well received. Nothing compares to seeing it in the theater. Like nothing compares to seeing
Uh-huh.
it in IMAX. The feeling I had watching it was just so different and like magnified by that experience. So definitely, I mean, it goes without saying your health comes first, your financials come first. If you can't afford to go see it for any reason, don't do it. Do whatever else you can. But if you're, vaccinated, you wear a mask, take precautions, you got the money, go see it once in IMAX, go see it, a couple times at your like regular local theater. It definitely helps, opening weekend more than anything else, whether it's streaming, or, waiting to go see it later on. So.
Yeah, and I do hope for the people that don't have the opportunity to see it for whatever reason in theater that they do that. Like, when part 2 comes out, have that double release. That would be I think it makes total sense.
Yeah.
So that was Dune Talk for this week. Lots of exciting stuff happening, and we'll be back again next week to discuss even more things happening all around the movie. So let's first start with you, Johnny. Where can people find more of your thoughts on Dune and other movie news?
Yeah, so the number one place to find me is definitely on Twitter. Johnny Sobchak is my Twitter handle, first and last name. My last name is a little bit tricky, but Sobczak. And I'm also on Letterboxd, also on Instagram. You can find me pretty much anywhere. I write for Inside the Film Room, so you can go follow them on any social media as well. I usually do articles and reviews. I can tell you right now, when Dune does come out, I will be the one writing the review for it. So look forward to that in a couple months. And I also have a Oscars big awards piece that I'm writing and is going to be published right before Venice and right before Dune premieres, which is going to give my predictions for what that might look like next year. And Dune will definitely be included, of course. But yeah.
Cool. Simon, where can people find you on social media?
So pretty much Instagram and Twitter, it's sDowdy. It's not my full name, it's just my first initial and last name, so it's SDAOUDI. Thank you for coming to my spelling bee. Marcus, thank you once again for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is Marcus Gabriel, so you can find all of my articles on DuneNewsNet.com and on Twitter and Instagram at DuneNewsNet. Thanks for joining us for this exciting discussion, and there's going to be much more next week.
We hope you've enjoyed Dune Talk. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you know when the next episode drops. Stay tuned to DuneNewsNet.com and add us to your social feeds. Be the first to hear breaking news and reviews.